Hello. This is a video about the process that I use when I want to both sharpen the subject in one of my close-up macros and also apply noise reduction to the background. I previously made a video called Strong Selective Noise Reduction in Lightroom, which goes into the noise reduction side of this in a bit more detail, explaining why I get into the situation where I need to use strong noise reduction on the backgrounds of some of my images. In this case, I'm going to have a quick look at the whole process and just look at one example rather than three in the other video, but go very quickly through the whole process. I'm going to work on this image. This is the embedded JPEG that we're looking at that's in a RAW file, and as we can see it's quite dark. So when we bring that the brightness level up, that's going to enhance any noise that's in there. So I start by applying DxO Optics Pro to it, and I apply a preset. Now in this case this was captured with a G series Panasonic camera at ISO 400, so I'll apply that preset to it, and as you can see it's brightened it up. It's also going to apply DxO's very good prime noise reduction, which only works on raw images. So what I do then is export that as a DNG file, because that retains all the information in the file. I won't actually export it. It takes about 35 seconds with this particular image. I then pick up the image, and by the way, I'm usually doing this with a whole load of images at the same time, so if I have 100 or 200, I just apply the preset to the lot and go away while it processes them. So I can then pick this up in SilkyPix Developer Pro, and it's here, and what I can do here is to, like I did in DxO, apply a preset. In this case we say it's parameters, and I load some development parameters, and I'll load these particular ones, and again I can then batch develop a whole load of these at the same time. Obviously there's only one at the moment, but typically I'm working with rather larger numbers of images. So that, if we have a look at the telling it to batch develop it, that's going to produce a TIFF file. So if we now go and look in Lightroom, we can pick up this TIFF file in Lightroom and then work on that. And again, with my normal process, I'd have 50, 100, 150, 200 images sitting here ready to be worked on with individual adjustments in Lightroom. And the sort of thing that I might typically do is to say, well, I think I'll bring the shadows up just a bit more, and perhaps bring the highlights down a little, possibly, and perhaps, oops, take the whites up a bit. I'll get Lightroom to decide how much to do that by holding the Shift key down and double clicking there. If I do that with the blacks, it will take it further down than I like it. And so I will manually bring it back up again. So I'd make those sorts of adjustments, and I might also have adjusted the clarity and the vibrance, typically turning the clarity up just a little bit and the vibrance down just a little bit. So having done that, we can now think about the sharpening and the noise reduction. Let's deal with the sharpening first. Now, this background is, I don't know if you'll be able to see it on the video, but it's got a fine mesh-like structure on it. It's a noise-like structure. So if I turn the sharpening up, you can see that that gets a lot worse. But it may well be that I do want to sharpen the subject. So what I can do is, if I just turn the sharpening up again, and we've got this really nasty effect in the background, I can turn the masking on, and I'm holding my finger down on the Alt key at this point, and as I press the little triangle over here, it's going to show me what's being sharpened. If we go back and look at the whole thing, it's telling me that only the bits that are in white are going to be sharpened, so I'm actually not sharpening a lot of that mesh-like structure in the background. So even though I've applied quite a lot of sharpening to the subject, we can see it's getting very frilly up here. That's much too much sharpening. But even so, the background hasn't got an awful lot worse. So I can use some combination of sharpening and masking. I mean, I might typically use something like that. It's pretty heavy on the sharpening, much too heavy according to what most people would do, I'm sure. So I've sharpened the subject, but I've now got this background which started out very dark, and Silky Pix has produced this mesh-like structure as well, and depending on the image, that noisy look to the background may appear in the final image. It may or may not, but let's just suppose it does. What I can do is, if we look again closely, and I'll take the masking down so we can see the effect of the mesh structure, I can turn the noise reduction, the luminance noise reduction, up a long way, and there it goes. The trouble is, of course, that all the other detail has gone in the subject. So what I can do now, I'm just going to go back and do this again. I'm going to turn the masking back up. So this is the sort of way we'd be dealing with it. So I'm going to turn this luminance noise reduction right up like I did before, quite a long way. And we now know that the subject has lost all its detail, but the background looks okay. So what I'm going to do now is use the adjustment brush, and I'm going to turn the noise slider right down, and I've got this set to 100% the flow, so it's going to be as strong as possible, and I've got the auto mask off. So when I paint, it's simply going to slap down a whole load of this. So everywhere that's in red now has the noise reduction turned off. Well, that'll be fine for the subject, but it won't be fine for the background, which will be noisy again. If I hold my finger down on the Alt key, that plus here turns to a minus, and I've also got auto mask this time turned on. So all I've got to do is to move around and just click here and there. Sometimes I'm sliding around, sometimes I'm just clicking, and that's going to take the mask. Now I need to get this right. Take the masking off, which means that the noise reduction is now applying again to the areas that are not red. So the areas of red have had the noise reduction, this very strong noise reduction, removed from them. So what I've now got is a combination of a background which is very heavily noise reduced and a subject which is quite strongly sharpened. If I just turn off the masking, and oh, I forgot to let's crop the image a bit. And of course cropping, and sometimes I do a lot more cropping than this, but cropping makes the noise stand out worse as well. So now I've got this image which is sharpened with the subject, and the background is very much noise reduced. So that's it. That's the technique that I use when I need to, and I find it very useful. So that's it for now. Goodbye.